Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a concept that, honestly, might completely flip how you think about your time on the bike or, out on a run. We're looking at the true science of aerobic-based training, and we are going to explore this deeply counterintuitive idea. Ready for it? It's the idea that to get faster, to build incredible endurance, and to really transform your fitness, you actually need to slow down. You literally need to ride easier. Let's get right into it. So ask yourself right now, are you riding too hard to get faster? It's a question almost every amateur athlete needs to answer honestly. I mean, for decades, we've all been sold on that classic no pain, no gain myth, right? The idea that if you aren't completely exhausted, totally wiped out at the end of a workout, you didn't really accomplish anything. But what if that exact mentality is the very thing holding your performance back? What if going hard every single day is actually destroying your long-term potential?
Here's our roadmap for today. First, the big endurance mistake. Second, defining true zone 2. Third, your biological engine upgrades. Fourth, fueling, fat versus glycogen. And finally, implementing the 80-20 rule.
All right, part 1, the big endurance mistake, the gray zone trap. To understand how to train correctly, we first kind of have to understand what we're doing wrong. Let's start with the absolute biggest endurance mistake out there. You see, most amateur cyclists hit the road and naturally settle into this moderately hard pace. It feels like a workout. You're sweating, you're breathing hard. It feels, well, productive. But physiologically, you've accidentally entered zone 3. The source documents refer to this as the gray zone. And the massive problem with the gray zone is that it is fundamentally too hard to allow for proper recovery, but simultaneously, it's too easy to trigger maximal aerobic adaptation. So you're building up this massive central nervous system fatigue, meaning you'll need way longer to recover, but you aren't getting the specific cellular benefits that actually build your aerobic engine. Basically, you're just making yourself tired. Okay, let's dive right into this next part. Section 2, defining true zone 2, aerobic-based training. So if the gray zone is a total trap, what's the alternative? Well, zone 2 isn't just, riding easy. It is a highly specific physiological state. It's an aerobic intensity where your body produces energy mainly using oxygen, and this is absolutely crucial, it keeps your lactate levels relatively low and stable. This represents the absolute highest intensity at which your body primarily utilizes fat oxidation for energy rather than relying heavily on your carbohydrate stores. It is literally the perfect sweet spot for building your aerobic base. But how do you actually know you're in it? Sure, professionals use fancy lactate monitors and power meters, but you can just use the feel test. This puts you at about a 3 or 4 out of 10 on the rate of perceived exertion scale. And here is the golden rule, the talk test. You should have controlled breathing, a stable heart rate, and you absolutely must be able to speak in full sentences. You might need a slightly deeper breath between sentences, sure, but if you have to break your sentences up just to gasp for air, you are going too fast. Think back to your last ride. Could you easily hold a continuous conversation? Because if not, you are likely out of zone 2. Which brings us to Section 3, your biological engine upgrades, under the hood. So why go through all the trouble of monitoring your breathing so closely? Well, it's because of the hardcore cellular science happening inside your body. When we look at how these biological upgrades map out, you can see that holding that specific conversational zone 2 pace means you aren't just passing time. You are actually triggering physical structural changes in your muscle fibers. And it all starts with something called mitochondrial biogenesis. Mitochondria are literally the power plants of your cells. They're where your energy is produced. Now, when you train in zone 2, your body realizes it needs more sustained, steady energy. So what does it do? It adapts. It creates more mitochondria in your slow-twitch muscle fibers, and it actually makes your existing mitochondria larger and way more efficient. The result of all this? You can produce significantly more sustainable power through aerobic pathways before your legs even begin to burn. You literally get a lower heart rate at the exact same power output. How cool is that? And this easy effort builds into even more advanced biological adaptations over time. For example, holding zone 2 actively forces the body to grow more MCT1 transporters. Think of these specialized proteins like little garbage trucks. They shuttle lactate out of your muscles so it can actually be reused as fuel somewhere else. This drastically improves your ability to clear lactate. On top of that, this sustained easy effort forces your body to grow more capillaries, which are those tiny blood vessels around your muscle fibers. It literally widens the biological highway for oxygen delivery and metabolic waste removal. All right, Section 4, fueling, fat versus glycogen. Now, what's really interesting here is how these structural upgrades completely change the way your body chooses its fuel. Remember that go hard every day mistake? That forces your body to burn high-octane glycogen, creates a massive recovery debt that absolutely fries your central nervous system, and basically builds a turbo ceiling on top of a very, very weak engine. The Zone 2 approach is entirely different. It burns fat, it keeps your recovery debt so low that you can practically do it every single day, and it builds this massive engine floor. So the crucial takeaway here is that Zone 2 teaches your body to be fat adopted. That means you rely on your body's abundant fat stores instead of your highly limited sugar stores. 2,000. Even the leanest, fittest cyclists out there only have about 2,000 calories of glycogen, or carbohydrate, stored in their muscles and liver. Guys, that is a very small gas tank. Once it's gone, you experience what cyclists call bonking, which is just a complete, sudden physical shutdown. But even those same extremely lean athletes have tens of thousands of calories stored as fat. By training in Zone 2, you unlock that massive vault of fat calories for your long efforts. That actively saves those 2,000 precious high-octane glycogen calories for the hardest climbs or that final sprint to the finish line.
Moving on to Section 5, implementing the 80-20 rule, training like a pro.
So the science is super clear. The biological adaptations are undeniable at this point. But how do we actually implement this on the road? Well, elite endurance athletes across the world use a golden ratio, the 80-20 rule. Elite cyclists often spend 70 to 80% of their total training volume at this low conversational intensity. That means out of 10 hours of riding, 8 of them are entirely strictly in Zone 2. The remaining 20%, that's reserved for extremely high-intensity interval training. The easy rides build the massive engine, and that 20% high-intensity stuff tunes the turbo.
So here are your actionable steps to make this work for you. First, adopt that 80-20 split for your own weekly schedule. Second, duration really matters. You should aim for 60 to 90 minutes or even more per session. You see, the physiological triggers for these specific cellular adaptations require sustained, uninterrupted time under tension. Short, choppy 20-minute rides just won't create those new mitochondria in the same way. And third, patience. Honestly, this is where your ego is going to take a hit. When you hit a hill, gear down, spin easy. Do not let your heart rate spike into that gray zone. Seriously, if it's too steep and you have to literally get off your bike and walk up the hill just to keep your heart rate in Zone 2, do it. Protect the zone at all costs.
I really want to leave you with this final, powerful summary right out of our source material. Zone 2 is the intensity where your body becomes better at producing sustainable energy. It is not flashy, it is not exhausting, but it is one of the most powerful endurance training tools in cycling. Train smarter, ride stronger. So the next time you gear up for a workout, I challenge you to ask yourself, are you brave enough to slow down today so that you can become truly unstoppable tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.